So same thing, you'll have to do it over here. It doesn't show up over here. So where it's controlling, I would suggest here's the mouse.
Okay.
So you can click through, and the website is behind this.
Okay. Whenever you guys are ready.
Okay.
Do you want to cheat? Do you want to cheat and use my phone?
Yeah. Go.
Okay. As a diehard sports fan, I love having a little skin in the game. Gives me a personal stake, makes players and teams that I otherwise wouldn't think about relevant. A few good wagers, whether for dollars, fantasy points, or bragging rights, make watching the games more interesting and fun, and make me a more knowledgeable and well-rounded sports fan. That is our buyer persona for our app, which is called The Book. It is here, switch to a second there. It is a consolidated betting odds dashboard that gives sports enthusiasts access to all the current odds with all the sports that are in season, and will eventually, with future feature updates, allow the user to set preferences and bet with paper money, play money, and track their results on how they've done, so they can test their gambling strategies. So our team here, what are we called? Oh, we're called The Book. We broke it down into kind of front end and back end, and then did so kind of pairs. We had Rob and Jake were doing the Bulma, which is one of our new technologies, and handlebars, and Brandon and I were working on back end, Sequelize, and all the other fun parts of that. But we're gonna kind of go around and talk about some of the things we did and all the various parts.
Okay. So our motivation was to build a site that would allow us to demonstrate our competencies with a lot of the different languages that we've learned. And then as far as simple functionality goes, why would somebody use this? Well, just to get spreads, for their betting strategy for any events. The project structure you can't really see too well if you want to skip to that page, but it's pretty in depth, and we've got that posted on our GitHub page. Do you want to go ahead and check out the site?
Well, let me say one thing about just the project structure. One thing unique about it was that we don't have all the betting odds, so we had to go to a third-party site, third-party API, and draw that information in, and without going into a database, feed it right to the handlebars, which ended up being friggin' hard, and took the better part of the whole time, but we got it thanks to Brandon at the very last minute. So, I'm sorry, go ahead. That's coming in from an Axios call in the back end.
Okay, so let's check out the site really quick. Go to the next slide. So here's our landing page. Go ahead and go to the next page. And so that's the old version.
The old version.
Okay. So anyway, when you click on a link or a card, it'll end up displaying the results, what spreads are going on for your current sport that you had an interest in. Next slide. And then for people who want to create an account so they can get daily spreads or access the account, we went ahead and created a sign-up form. And all that data, once it's captured, it's stored in MySQL. Go to the next slide. So just recapping how we split up all the work. Jake and I, we were responsible for the framework, which Bulma was our new technology, handlebars, and this very PowerPoint presentation. The logic was done by Brandon and Ford, and working with Node and Express, SQLize, and JSON. Next slide. And this is a list of everything that we've used that's put into the site. The odds we were working with initially, but because of some issues, well, for one, it was European, so it didn't have a lot of the sports that we wanted to use. So we went ahead and switched to another site called The Rundown.
And they only give you money line, they won't give you spreads.
And then next slide. And then our challenges, primarily two of them. Brandon, do you want to talk about how fun it is working with SQLize?
I love to complain about SQLize. No, SQLize isn't that bad, honestly. The hardest part is getting it set up. And once it is set up, it works like a charm. Unfortunately, it takes forever to get it set up, which is the tricky part. That was the biggest difficulty on the back end. Other than that, it's pain to get it set up, but once it's set up, it's fine.
And Jake, you want to talk about handlebars?
Yeah, so handlebars, a little bit of a love-hate relationship so far. I really love features of it, how you can keep the same header and footer. There's a lot less that you have to refresh when you switch pages. You can just repopulate the body with whatever new view you're trying to look at. And just getting used to everything being so scattered out in different folders and different files is just a little bit difficult for me so far. I'd say probably the biggest challenge we worked through kind of early, which I don't know if you guys noticed, but when we added our folders for CSS and photo and our images, if they are not in the public folder, they will not display. Even if your file path is perfectly correct, nothing will display. It's just, I guess, how Handlebars handles things. So it was really interesting. It was a fun challenge. I want to work with it more, get better with it, because I can see how it can be beneficial, especially with a lot more complicated sites where you have a lot of reused templates and data. So
Nice. It's good improvements. Do you want to take us on?
Well, do we have the deployment up? We can talk about those and then switch back. Let's look at the home. This is, look, the site looks great. These are the sports that are up right now. That's our sign-in sheet that will save the user information into MySQL via SQLize. And you pick your sport or via the button on the bottom. And this is a live feed of odds. So, what you're seeing is you got your, home team, away team. Did I have that right? Yeah, our table kind of got off kilter, and then you have, home team, away team, points, point spread. The Yankees are giving up 1.5 points to the Indians. Money line. If you want to bet for the Yankees, you got to bet 127 to win 100, or a $100 bet wins you 117 on the Tribe. And then if you want to bet the over/under, here it is. 10 is the over/under, and there's the money on the over/under. So that flows through. And actually, speaking of improvements, these will be much smaller, and they'll be populated neatly across and down using a Flexbox setup, Flex setup with little containers on that. And then if you go back to home, are we all right on time? Okay. Can we go back to home?
Yeah.
Or we can go back either home. Oh yeah, there we go. So then we'll just have the ability to convert this section here into a dashboard of, the record of how a particular user's done with their bets. Track their bets with charts and that kind of stuff. But, tell you the truth, when that data flowed through into Handlebars, No one was more surprised than me that it worked. So I couldn't be happier, to tell you the truth. I've learned a ton from this project.
Oh yeah.
In fact, like 3 nights ago, I think it was, I thought that handlebar was served from the front end. So that's why it's a miracle it's working.
Questions, comments? Thank you.
Questions?
All right. So when you're clicking on a sport, your front end is having you make a call to your back end, which is making an Axios call.
Yes.
And then how are you bringing the Axios call straight back to the front end? As that is a problem that we were running into ourselves.
Yeah, so that's kind of tricky. So the way I have it set up is you have a route that's kind of like this intermediate route, and we literally call it API/the odds or the rundown, whatever API we're using. So the front end sends the request to your back end route, then the back end makes the Axios call.
Yep.
That comes back as the response, and then that route, intermediate route, sends the response back to the front end. So it's kind of like this
Through
ring
the
around the
HTML
rosy.
route.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
So,
It was a bit.
talk about the new tool or Booma or
Oh yeah.
Booma.
Can you just expand on it? Kind of.
That's yours.
Right. So it looks like it's Bootstrap based, and most of the documentation I got was actually on GitHub, and I found that a lot of the smaller companies or newer languages are just placing all their documentation or sample themes on GitHub, which is really nice because you have this centralized thing. There's just a lot more. There's shortcuts, and it was a lot easier than the last project that I was on, which I don't even remember now the name of it because I just
liked
wanted to
it?
burn it. I hated it so much the first one, but it's. I mean, I like it. I mean, it's not as expansive as you would find with Bootstrap. But something that just came up within the last couple of years isn't going to be that extensive yet, but. It looks like from that GitHub site, there's a lot of people who are using it because they're uploading their themes and the things that they're creating. So it's sort of like this micro community and it's really nice. And that wasn't the case of the one whose name I've forever banished from my brain. But anyway, yeah.
I personally liked the class names. The naming conventions are really just easy to understand. Everything is or has, and so. You just put that with, in the documentation, it's really easy to understand. So like is, text, bold, whatever. And so it just kind of, however it reads is how it sounds, So it doesn't take a whole lot of memorization to, as much as other technologies that I've worked with.
I think we also need to give credit where credit's due. Brandon created something that I thought was really cool. It's this cycling program that cycles the keys, so you can get multiple API keys. And if you're worried before your presentation that you're going to run out of polls, takes care of
it.
Yeah, so we have like 4 keys for every API. So quadruple our pull request limit.
Any questions? Good.
Thank you.